So Travis, how do you feel about the term natural horsemanship?
So it, you know, it might have been around a while. I remember it coming on the scene in like the late 80s, kind of. There was a predominant clinician that really used it a lot. It was popular. He's still around. He's still a big name. Still has quite a following. But you kind of started hearing that term coined in the late 80s up till now. And I think it's intended to help people feel that it's kind of a more natural way of going, but I think more often, and I don't mean to offend anybody, I just call a spade, it's a little more of a marketing tool, to kind of help people feel good about, or to think about maybe doing a more less invasive, low impact way of training. But really, the word has really been, I think, overused a lot. People just say it kind of cliche without really much thought. I try to stay away from that term, natural horsemanship, because what's really natural for a horse? I believed horses were created for mankind to use them. I totally get that. But we kind of make these analogies of what would they be? What are they doing in the wild? This and that. Well, there ain't nothing natural about strapping a block of wood on their back, or a saddle on their back, or strapping iron on their feet, or putting a piece of iron in their mouth, which, by the way, these natural horsemen use. Even the guys who started that they all use bits and spurs and saddles. So, if you really want to be natural, about as natural as you can get is...
So it's a pretty broad term, you would say, really.
Yeah, and if you really, really, really want to get down to it, if you want to be natural, look at the way the Native Americans were probably the most natural, because they rode kind of bareback. Some of them had saddles and stuff, but they were very good bareback riders, They didn't use iron in a horse's mouth. They didn't have spurs, really to speak of, They used rawhide, and they used horsehair, but they weren't easy. They weren't mystically easy on a horse either. A lot of them would, they'd rope a horse, choke him down until he was just about out of air, and choke him down on the ground, and then they'd blow into his nose and let him smell them, and then they'd get on him and ride him, So, you can, whatever.
So how would you describe, what would you use to describe the approach you use to horsemanship?
That's a good question. I have no idea. Because I'm always changing. I'm always changing. And it's funny how these big clinicians or big looked up to deified guys, they change. They should be changing. Nobody comes out of the womb. None of us know this. There's not like there's a Bible. Inspired from heaven above on how to deal with horses. There's books, but about half of them are bullcorn. You're like, no. But it's one guy's opinion. So, I got my opinion. Everybody's got their opinion.
Yeah.
And I think a guy needs to think outside the box. You can learn a lot from other people, don't get me wrong. But you can also learn what not to do. If you can separate the ego and the pride and the marketability, because that's what a lot of this stuff is. It's marketed in a package that appeals to a certain demographic, like, middle-aged women, or, which is, by the way, probably, I don't know, probably 80%, 90% driving the horse industry is women. You know, you just go to any clinic, or our lessons, when we gave lessons, and you know, like it or not, that's what you're dealing with. And so, you know, so it's actually it's genius to package it in a market it in a package, like you can have a relationship with your horse, and we can do this naturally. And you know, you hear this low impact training. So to answer your question, how do I do it?
Or what's your approach?
My approach is I try to approach it like how horses deal with horses. And man, when you've seen horses deal with horses, man, sometimes it is brutal. Now, I'm not saying I'm brutal, but I am saying there have been times, especially with remedial horses, you know, horses that I'm trying to fix that have been kind of messed up, or it could be a green horse that's really tough, really tough. It takes every fiber of my soul, you know, to push on them or to do what I've got to do. I mean, it's not all unicorns and rainbows, you know. That's when you're dealing with a wide variety of horses, you know. And I think that's another thing. I mean, a person needs to recognize their limitations, you know, and stay in their lane. Maybe they can only handle this category of horse.
And I think that's a good point. Or maybe they just can only handle up to this level, and then next level needs to maybe someone else who has a little more experience and can handle the next level. So there's even different levels, right?
Oh, totally.
Not only just different types of horses, but different levels. So really it's staying within your lane and of what your knowledge and experience is, and then going from there.
And we won't mention any names, but we had a client that just had remember that horse was just a beautiful, gentle, just an awesome, quiet gelding. It was just wonderful. And she sold it. And she bought a Mustang that was just way out of her league. And she was scared of it. She brought it to several trainers, brought it to me, and this horse was way above. But
so maybe that goes back to modesty and knowing
but,
your limitations. And
I'm not saying all Mustangs are that. I mean, she would have been better off with a gentler Mustang, but she picked a Mustang that was was colored the way she wanted, and she just, and I remember when she brought it to me, you couldn't even pick up his feet to trim him, and this horse had been rode a lot.
Yeah.
But she was using a trimmer that liked to trim his feet without a halter on his head. I was like, I'll put a halter on him, for crying out, and boom, fixed him.
Well, so I think what my takeaway is being balanced. There is no one size fits all.
Oh no.
And being balanced at the way you approach it.
Yeah.